Welcome to Bunny Hugs and Mental Health, the podcast that deals with all things mental health. We talk to professionals, survivors, and loved ones about their sometimes informative, sometimes uplifting, and sometimes tragic stories. I'm your host of the show, Todd Rennebaum, advocate, recovering addict, experienced sufferer of depression and anxiety, and author of the children's book, Sometimes Daddy Cries. Hello and welcome to another episode of Bunny Hugs and Mental Health. I'm your host, Todd Rennebaum, and thank you for tuning in once again. It's been a wonderful week, and there's been lots of wonderful comments and messages about last week's episode about Tessa and narcissism, and I want to share one with you. This is from Nancy. I also feel that many people consider these people write-offs and not worthy of any attempt at trauma therapy. It's really sad. Many cases can be treated. Thank you, Nancy. I couldn't agree more. And, it's a disorder. It can be treatable. So thank you for that comment. And thank you again, Tessa, for last week's interview. It really was a great episode. The next episode, next week, is also another amazing episode. And that's with Jimmy and Charnay. And they were on the Netflix television show Love on the Spectrum. And in the second season, they were actually married on the show. So we're going to talk about all the different kind of mental health issues that are wrapped around being on the spectrum and having ADHD and any other kind of secondary diagnosis that a lot of people on the spectrum have. I'm very excited about that episode. I'm also very excited about Thursday, October 13th. I will be in Melfort, Saskatchewan, speaking at a mental health symposium for youth. So if you're youth or a youth, if you have youths living with you or in your family and you're around Melfort around then, please go online to youthmatter.ca/events, and you can sign up to go to that. And the same organization, youthmatter.ca, they have Teen Talk Tuesdays, and that's, I believe, online still. And they have all types of wonderful guest speakers and stuff every week, talking to the youth about mental health. And I was a speaker about a year ago, and it was awesome. And it's an awesome organization, so please check that out. Plus, if you happen to be in Indian Head, Saskatchewan in January, I don't remember the dates, but I'll have them soon. Actually, it's just one date. We're going to be doing a live podcast. I will be speaking with stand-up comedian Big Daddy Taz. I spoke with him a few months back, but this time we're going to be talking live in front of an audience, and he's going to be doing a stand-up show. I'll be doing a bit of a talk about my own mental health issues and stuff in the past. Then we're going to sit down, have a little interview, and do some questions and answers with the audience. So if you are available, I don't remember the dates. Doesn't matter. I'll tell you next week. You can get tickets and come to the beautiful, beautiful Grand Theater in Indian Head. It's a 100-year-old opera house. I'm telling you, it's just a beautiful building. And come to a live taping. Now, this week, this episode, just moments from now, I am speaking with Angelica, and she too is a mental health podcaster here in Canada. She's based out of Toronto, Ontario. Anyway, Angelica's podcast is called the Revolutionized Mind, and she talks to all types of people about mental health issues, very, a lot like this podcast. She herself has experienced mental health issues in the past, and she was also a high-level athlete. She played soccer or football or footy if you were from Europe or Australia or wherever. And so we talk a lot about the pressures of being an athlete and trying to overcome injuries and what that does to your mental health as someone that's a very competitive person. More and more you hear about athletes, especially Olympic athletes and tennis players and stuff like this. They pull out of events because of mental health issues or to prevent a mental health issue. And I applaud that. That's very responsible to take your mental health and have that your priority. So, without further ado, I give you Angelica.
Yeah, sounds good. First of all, thanks for having me. It's nice to connect with you. My name's Angelica Galuzzo, and I'm the podcast host of the Revolutionized Mind. My story is very complicated. It can go a whole bunch of different ways, but from where I start, basically, is just that I started really struggling with my mental health in high school. Was struggling for a little bit before I found out it was clinical depression and generalized anxiety disorder. I was struggling a lot with suicidal thoughts, self harm, substance use, and all that fun stuff. So it took me a while to really figure that out and get to the place where I'm at today. And I like to say, like, I'm definitely not cured. Just because I have a podcast doesn't mean I have everything figured out. I'm still learning, but definitely come a long, long way from where I was. And then the sports aspect, I was a high level athlete my whole life. I played soccer. My hopes and dreams were always to go to the next level, to do something in my sport. And I did see a lot of success in youth soccer. I had won two provincial championships and two national championships. I got a scholarship to a Division 1 school. I went to the University of Cincinnati for 2 years before I transferred back home. And in between all that, I had 5 major knee surgeries in 5 years. So that was a really rocky experience, and just trying to navigate that through recruiting, through when I was actually in the States and then coming back home. It was a lot mentally, physically, emotionally, and so many different things I can talk about and break down. But I guess I'll let you ask what I guess you're most interested in for today's episode. But yeah, I'm just happy I still do play today, which I'm happy about. I play summer soccer. So grateful to still have that ability.
Great. No, that's it. Thank you for being on the podcast. No. So was there any what caused, I guess, because a lot of times there's trauma or some kind of event that starts the anxiety, starts the depression in high school and stuff. Was there something going on in your life that kind of, I guess, triggered it? I mean, some of it is just DNA.
Yeah, I think most of mine was just general DNA. And I would always say, like, I had everything going for me. I had an amazing family and support system. I was a good student. I was a social person. Nothing really was different about me. And I think I just continuously put on that brave face and kept trying to be that person who had everything figured out in front of people. And then when I came home and was alone with my thoughts, like, that's when it would all come barreling down. So I think that was the hardest thing for me myself to grasp, as well as trying to explain that to other people, because, you'd get you have everything. What do you have to be depressed about? What's going on with you? So there was a lot of that internal stigma I had to fight as well. And it took me a long time to really acknowledge myself that this is what depression is. This is how it makes me feel specifically, and how I can try to combat that, which did take me a long time to figure out.
Were other people saying, like, just cheer up, like you have a lot, your life is really great, other people have it a lot worse?
Oh, absolutely.
And that didn't help?
No, not at all, actually.
Oh,
Surprisingly.
Yeah, that is weird. Yeah, I heard all that kind of stuff too, and I was like, well, first off, you don't even know my life, so but secondly, that's not how our brains work. That's not exactly how. So the substance abuse, was that, or I'm assuming it was abuse-ish?
I was just drinking when I definitely shouldn't have been. I would go out with my friends and drink and chalk it up to just partying and having a good time, but there were always, I guess, bad intentions behind it. And I would always push myself to a point of too much. So that was, I guess, a little easier for me to accept when I was going out and drinking. But when I was just drinking at home by myself, like, I would do things that I definitely shouldn't have been, especially in high school. Um, so yeah, that was tricky too, because I was hiding that from a lot of people, and it was just something I thought I needed to get through the day. Like, when feelings started to get overwhelming, I would just say to myself, "Hey, what's a quick shot here or there to just, like, calm myself down," which I quickly learned that that was not a healthy coping mechanism.
Was it just alcohol for the most part? Not just alcohol, but
Yeah.
Alcohol only?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, and by what age did you kind of realize that was not great?
It was definitely like between grades 11 and 12 when I was doing it the most. And I've really had to, I guess, look at my relationship with alcohol. I still do drink today. I'm still definitely somebody who likes to go out and have a good time, but it's more about the intentions behind it now that I've changed a lot in, and I'm not just doing it to pass the time or to cope with my feelings, although sometimes I might have a drink. Um, and I think it's just understanding why you're doing that behavior and what it's going to serve you in, whether that's physical, emotional, mental, or social, just having a good time with your friends. I think there can be some benefits to drinking and social activities and things like that. But obviously, as long as it's done in moderation and you're taking care of yourself first.
Okay. But was the alcohol a problem when you were in college and doing the sports?
I wouldn't say a problem. I was definitely still drinking typical university lifestyle, although mine looked a little different than the typical student because I did have other commitments and responsibilities like high level soccer, but it was definitely much more in control.
Mm. So I'm clearly an athlete. No, I'm not. I've never competed in anything athletic in my life. But lately, you hear it more and more. I think it was it the Summer Olympics we just had not too long ago? And there was a couple different athletes that were like pulling out of events, and they said it was for mental health reasons and stuff. There's a famous tennis player. I don't have any names. I'm terrible at names, but you hear it more and more. Different athletes kind of pulling out of events for their mental health. Um, was that? Can you relate with something like that? Like, was it that stressful?
It's definitely a lot. For me personally, I feel like my sport was my grounding factor through a lot of my struggles. So
Mm,
I always felt that it was something I needed. It was the one thing that gave me purpose, especially at the beginning. That first year I really started struggling was the best youth soccer year I had. That was the year we won our club nationals. So I think I did put kind of, I guess, all my eggs in one basket, for lack of a better phrase, and just saying, like, when I couldn't get up in the morning, I knew I had practice at night. I knew I had a team relying on me. I was the captain of the team. I knew I had to show up for them. So I would just kind of force myself to do that. Looking back, I can definitely see ways that that was healthy and unhealthy because I wasn't really addressing what was going on with me. But it was definitely an amazing physical outlet, emotional outlet, because when I was on the field, nothing else really mattered. And I knew it was something I did have talent in. So it was confidence boosting, gave me self esteem. And especially to see the success that we did as well, that definitely helped. Um, so, yeah, like soccer at that time and still to this day is honestly one of my biggest coping mechanisms, just being active, doing something with my body, whether that's just going for a walk, anything athletic really just gives me that space from reality.
hmm. So, do you think it makes a difference if, like, usually the people I hear that are pulling out of events, it's like a singular thing. It's not like they're a team sport. It's like an individual sport. Do you think the team aspect was part of what helped with your coping? You know what I mean? Would it be
Yeah.
different for you think, if it was an individual sport?
Yes and no. I think it can be very subjective, and community is obviously like a big protective factor for mental health, doing something with people that brings you joy and things like that. So the team aspect really did make it easier for me just because I knew I had external people relying on me. So that's kind of what got me going. But it's tough because, like, when you look at high level sports, there are so many standards and things that you're putting yourself through constantly. And it does take a big toll on mental, physical, emotional health. So it's important to really pay attention to that. And I think it's awesome to see people put themselves first and see these big name people stepping back to take care of themselves. I think it does really help young athletes see that it's not like your sport is not the end all be all, like you are a person first. Um, but yeah, it can be very subjective at different times of your life as well. It's just really so dependent on whatever's going on around you.
With people in team sports, you do hear about people that emotionally and physically, what was it? Emotionally, physically,
Mentally.
mentally, right? The whole reason why we're talking. They have troubles maybe in team sports when their body starts to fail. So you said you had a lot of knee surgeries, 5 major knee surgeries. Like, was that a hard pill to swallow? And what did that do to you mentally? And
Yeah, it was tough. They were all random injuries. I always pride myself on the fact that I never injured the same thing twice. And I would say, like, I swear I'm actually really good at recovery. I always fully recovered and came back, I think, a better player after every single injury. But it was, I think, the most for me mentally and emotionally trying to cope with what was going on, just because I always had such high goals and aspirations for myself in my sport. And I felt like I just couldn't catch a break. Like I would recover and then get hurt again right away. Um, so it was really tough. And I just kept asking like those questions, like, why me? Why is this happening? One of my injuries, like the worst one, was me just standing up out of a chair. I got up and my whole meniscus just shredded apart. And that one was the one that actually, after that one, was when I decided to transfer back home. I just got sick of living all my days in the training rooms in Cincinnati. But yeah, it was a lot to even come to that decision to transfer as well, because that was kind of me giving up all my dreams, and coming back home was a really tough decision for me. And it was a lot. And I can talk about each one for hours because they were all so different and they all had different effects on my overall health. But
well, I can
I think,
see in your eyes, like
oh
when you're
God,
talking,
yeah, I
that
can
it's still
start
emotional.
crying.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still really tough for me. And I try to, like, everything happens for a reason is one of my mottos. I know some people hate that phrase, some people love it. But for me, it really did allow me to come back home. And that's when I started getting involved in mental health initiatives. And now I have a podcast. And I just think I needed to go through what I went through in order to be at the position I'm at today. And it really did teach me so much. I can never take that away, just about myself, about life, about my own resilience and what I've gone through and what I know I'm capable of, as well as just giving other people the inspiration if they're going through similar things, that although when you're going through it, it feels like the end of the world, like there is a light at the end of the tunnel, even though it is quite difficult to see that sometimes.
Hmm. So how long ago was that you transferred back?
I transferred back in 2018
Okay. So it's
and
fresh, but
graduated
not
in 2021. Yeah.
okay. Um, so I mean, tell me more. Like you said, you could talk talk about it for hours. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
curious, kind of what the whole process looked like, and the whole, you know, cry. No, you
so the
don't have to
first
cry.
one,
But
it's okay. I'm vulnerable. The first one was 2014, so that was my grade 10 year. And that one was like the easiest recovery for me because it was the first one. I was still so motivated, so determined. And so before that, I had had some interest from schools in the States, and I kind of had an idea of what the next trajectory would look like. And when I got that first injury, I actually lost some of those interests because they didn't want to wait the 6 months it would take for me to recover. So that was a just tough pill to swallow itself, because I did not have any other control over that situation. Um, but then I did have a few schools that were willing to, they had extra time and they were recruiting class, and they said they would wait until I recovered and would come back and watch me play. So that was definitely a big motivating factor as well, just knowing that I did still have people on my side and this wasn't going to make or break everything I had dreamed of.
so you're like 15 at that time.
Yeah.
I mean, just when I was 15, all I was worried about was like, am I gonna make out with a girl this weekend, and who's gonna pull my beer for me? You're worried about, you know, your entire future in your career as a professional athlete. Like,
Yeah.
that sounds insane to me.
I always definitely had like a lot of things on the go. I was always striving for the next thing. I never really allowed myself to settle down. And I was like that in my academics and sports and just who I was as a person. That's just how I carried myself. And a lot of that, I think it was just masking whatever mental health struggles I was going through. It was just kind of pushing myself as hard as I can and making it seem like I had everything together. And really, I was struggling, but
So it's almost like people that are workaholics. It was like that was
yeah,
your, I don't know, your addiction in a way, I guess.
yeah, yeah. And Brene Brown actually talks about that a lot. She's a famous researcher, just not really perfectionism, but just being those people who put all your focus into something as a way of avoiding your feelings. That's pretty much what I was doing.
That would have done the opposite for me. That would have made me feel. So there was no. So it was like no one else was putting those external pressures on you. It was all. It was you. It was you. I want to succeed. I want to be perfect. I want the best school. I want. Interesting.
Yeah, well, I think growing up as well, like those were things that were just kind of said to us, especially in youth sports. We would be told by coaches, like the next level is the States, is the D1 school, is what are you going to do after that? So like those questions and prompts were always in the back of my mind. My
Mm-hmm.
parents always pushed me enough to be my best, but they knew most of it was just my own dreams. So they kind of just let me do it. But my whole family is a huge soccer family. We all played. So it was nice to have that support and understanding that the people around me actually knew like what it would take, the extra training, how far my parents drove me to every game and practice. Like I could not have done that without any of my sports system.
Hmm. I've seen it where I grew up. Like I live in small town Saskatchewan, but it was with hockey and a lot of kids. Some of the kids like they went off to private school for hockey, and yeah, I'd see the stereotypical hockey parents that are like yelling at the refs, and they're also the coach and stuff. So your parents weren't that intense?
They definitely were intense. They were very involved. My dad coached us growing up, but as we started getting to the high levels, he kind of pulled away. They were definitely intense. I'll say that.
Okay. Yeah, because there was a local guy here that made it to the NHL and was like instantly that was every kid's dream around here, and it was weird. As someone who can't even skate, I mean, I basically wasn't involved in that at all. But from the outside looking in, I'm like, oh my God, these people are nuts. They're like, yeah, 15, 16 years old, and their parents are putting pressure on them. Their coaches are putting pressure on them. They're putting pressure on themselves. Some of them didn't even like playing hockey, but it was like, I don't know. It's a lot of, that's a lot to take as a 15-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
So then you obviously were in, you said 5 major surgeries in 5 years. So then grade 11,
Yeah,
grade
so
12,
then
more pressure, less schools
yeah.
interested.
And then, so I guess I recovered from that injury. That was when we had all the success. And then I had signed my letter. I was going to Cincinnati. Everything was looking great. And then a month before I was supposed to move, I tore my other ACL. So that one was really tough emotionally. Like the first one, I don't remember ever like crying or bringing me down, but that one was just like, I thought at that moment, like everything was done for me. And I remember I was so scared having to call my coaches at the school and tell them what happened because I would be out for that whole first season. And I always say, like, I have to give so much credit to the University of Cincinnati. Those coaches were incredible and they stuck by their promise that they would take me on for 4 years. They would keep me a part of the program. And they just assured me, like, we'll get you back for next season. Come down here, use our resources. They had an incredible training program and athletic staff, which I was so lucky to be a part of. So, yeah, going in as a redshirt freshman was definitely challenging in itself. Not feeling like I was part of the team, literally spending all my free time in the training room. It was a lot to really adjust, like moving countries, doing all of that while not really feeling like I fit in. So that was a lot to kind of navigate as well.
So that second injury, is that kind of when you started to take shots of alcohol at home and stuff? Like that was when you really started to avoid feelings?
No, that was more in high school, like more my mental health related stuff. It wasn't necessarily soccer related. Yeah, but my second one, I was already in the States, so things were a little different.
Oh, I see.
Mhm.
So in grade 11, you weren't. I'm a little confused. Grade 11's not high school for you?
No, it is. Maybe it was the next summer, but the year, so it was 2016, 2018, 2019, 2020. So there was a gap there, but then I had back to back ones after. Yeah. So grade 11, I was good. Grade 12 was that summer before. Yeah.
So is Cincinnati a good school for soccer? I have no idea.
They're definitely up there in terms of programs. It was an amazing experience. I'm so happy I at least got to go and experience like what the life of a D1 athlete is like, even though my journey was a little bit different than most. I still got to, live the life of a student athlete at a top school. So that was a really cool experience.
Hmm. So all the boys were falling over you?
It was
Or
fun.
girls or
I
whatever you're
made
into. I don't know.
I did make a lot of friends on different sports teams. All the injured kids kind of made a pact in the training room. So
Yeah.
it was cool.
Yeah, I never thought of that. So all the sports use the same training room, and
Mhm.
yeah. So now you're like, I don't want to sound rude, but it's like the misfits of all the
Yeah,
teams got
literally.
together. And,
Yeah.
oh, that's good.
Mhm.
So the decision to come back, kind of maybe walk me through that and how, kind of walk me through that decision and
Yeah.
how you were feeling. And
So that was after the third one. So after the second one, I called them. I redshirted that year. I had finally got cleared to play in the February of that next year. So it was spring season for us. And I was feeling so good. I finally got cleared to play. I got to train with the team for the first time, fully contact everything. And 6 days of training. That's all I got. And then that was when I stood up from the chair and that next one happened. So that was, I think, just a lot of emotions at once because obviously just going from getting cleared after a year, playing, whatever, and then this happens. And it's a surgery that's going to keep me out for the whole next season as well. So I would have been a double medical red shirt, which is very rare. Um, so after that, I also was just going through some, I guess, personal stuff with friendships, and my grandfather had just passed away as well. So I had come home for the week, and it just all kind of happened in the span of a couple months. And I remember one day I just got so fed up with everything, and it was just all became too much. And I remember calling my parents and just saying, like, I think this is it. I want to come home. Like this was my dream. I got to do it, but at this point, like I don't want to sit in the training room all day every day. Like it's just not where I want to be. So yeah, I ended up after that conversation, actually my dad had like called me, and he's not a very sentimental guy, but he was just like, "Are you sure? Like this has been your whole dream, your whole life. Like we'll help you through this next one. Are you sure you want to do this?" Um and I just remember feeling like confident in my decision, even though it was super hard. But I was like, this is exactly what I need to do for myself, although it's not like, I guess, aligned with what I wanted to do and my goals as a soccer player. I think it's the best decision I can make, which I can honestly say it was. Um, and it was last minute, like it was in April, school ends in April, so I had to like quickly do the transfer process. And I was lucky to know a coach and some old teammates that played at a school here at Western University, so I was happy to get in and be a part of this new team. And that was obviously another transition, new program, new environment to get used to, so that was tough as well.
so you kept playing soccer though. Like you moved back to Toronto, and it wasn't like you just stopped playing soccer. It was just at that level. Is that
No,
right?
yeah, I definitely knew. And that was kind of the, I guess, differentiation I had to make for myself. Like I knew I wasn't done playing. I just knew I was done giving up that part of the dream. I still definitely knew I could physically do it, even though I'd been through these injuries. I was confident in my ability to recover, and I got cleared again. And yeah, I just like, it's a feeling you have in your heart. Like I knew I wasn't ready yet. And even still today, I know I'm not ready to give it up as I'm still playing. It's still something that brings me a lot of joy. It's still something that gives me that connection and community with my teammates and things like that. So yeah, I definitely, that was tough though, like the soccer transition going from, I guess, that level back to home. Just a completely different culture in terms of athletics.
Do you think you could ever play at another professional level at some point, or have you just completely? Are you still kind of hanging on to it a little bit?
Yeah, well, even when I came home, like I'd say I was given opportunities to continue at a higher level. And even like still in summer soccer, it's called League One. Like still I've been asked to like play at those higher levels. But for where I'm at now and for everything I've gone through, I've decided like I don't, not that I don't want to, because I still would love to. I just feel like I'm not at that place anymore, physically, mentally. Like I'm still very much in it, but not to that degree. Um, and yeah, I think a lot of it was just that emotional like tie to what the dream was. And then going through everything I went through, it just was a lot of why me? This clearly wasn't my path. I like was as strong as I could have been through them all, but at that point I was just done with that side of things.
Do you think the universe was giving you a message, being like, look, this isn't for you. Let's hurt her knee. Boom. Oh, she's trying again. Let's hurt her other knee. Boom. Oh God, here she goes again.
That's what I've been asked. Like if it was kind of a sign from the universe saying like this isn't meant for you. And still I don't think that's the case, because that's like what I always only thought was meant for me. And I think it was more just, I guess, life lessons, like teaching me things as I go. Like I had to go through what I went through to have the perspectives I do now, to like slightly be grateful for every injury I went through, as it taught me something. That's been a
Slightly.
long process because it's tough.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, a lot of mixed feelings towards that, and still like anger towards the situation and what I could have made out of it, but trying to make peace with everything.
Anger. Who are you mad at? Yourself?
Everyone.
Uh,
Just life, like the fact that it happened, like I didn't think I deserved it, or so just a lot of that, a lot of inner questioning, I guess.
are you talking to a professional, not athlete, but a professional? What the hell am I trying to say? Like a therapist or a counselor or
Counselor,
anything?
yeah.
Have you gone through any of that?
Yeah, I did talk to a few sports psychologists. In between that, I didn't honestly connect with them really well, just because I think my situation was so unique. And, like they would talk about, because they obviously have experience dealing with injuries and injury recovery, but my situation was a little different than that, having multiple. And I just didn't really feel like the ones I was talking to really understood that and were able to give me anything more than what I already knew. And I think most of it was just the own like stuff I had to deal with in my own mind and my own perspectives around what my life was going to look like without soccer.
Maybe it has nothing to do with soccer. Maybe it's other things you have to talk about and deal with that
Yeah.
got you into why soccer became an addiction.
Mm-hmm.
So you may have to go way, way back. And maybe it happened in the womb.
Yeah.
You may have to talk to a witch or a soothsayer. I don't know what I'm talking about. So, what were you taking in university for classes?
Psychology.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
well, here we are. Okay. So now, are you a psychologist?
No. I did start actually a master's in counseling psychology last year, which I ended up withdrawing from. I just did not enjoy the program I was in. And after, I guess, some reflection, I just realized that that was obviously more focused on individual counseling, where I'm more interested in community mental health and what kind of changes we could make on a larger level. And I do have a lot of mixed feelings towards private practice. I think there's a lot of things that need to change, not on a therapist level, like obviously more on a deeper level. So just where I
Explain.
was, oh God, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, well,
A
let's do
lot of
it.
systemic issues there. um, yeah, I just always like to, I guess, clarify that it's not the therapist's fault that they need to charge so much for their sessions. It's the fact that it's not covered. They don't get paid as much as they should, as like because of their schooling, their credentials, they should be getting paid a lot more like other healthcare professionals. But I just don't think we at a provincial or federal level have, we do have the knowledge, we're just not applying it to give them those resources, and even just equity in terms of resources. Like a lot of people don't have access to therapists, so a lot of change needs to happen.
I agree. I have a funny feeling a lot of people agree.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was telling you, I'm waiting for an ADHD assessment, and it's been, so it's a psychologist that does the assessment. And I called in March, and it might be another couple months yet before I actually see this person. I'm a little different. I'm not paying privately. I was able to get funding through the government or some programs of some type. And so then the waiting list is even longer. So unless I had $2,000 just kicking around to see maybe if I have ADHD or not, which I don't, you could have got in faster. But even then, there's a waiting list.
Mm-hmm.
So the way it works is the person that does these free ones, it's not like they all take turns. It's like this one psychologist just does the free ones. So the private ones keep getting, more money, more whatever. So it's hard to keep that position filled because they're like, well, why am I doing free ones and making less money than if I could just do, private ones and make money? Well, why am I putting myself through this? Instead of spreading it out over people or, over different psychologists, maybe every psychologist does a free one every few weeks or whatever. It's, yeah, one person gets stuck in this position. So, yeah, the system's weird, man. It's
Mm-hmm.
even I've heard horror stories that it takes 2 years to see a psychiatrist in Saskatchewan, especially youth psychiatrists. So, yeah, that's we could talk several hours about that with many different people.
Yeah, it's a very complicated topic.
So that your education that you're taking, you don't want to become a private psychologist. You want to kind of be more in the working the
Like,
system somehow.
yeah, in the community space as well. And
Mm.
even like I can still see myself as a counselor, just not necessarily where I'm at right now. I think it sounds cheesy, but more personal growth needs to come on my end, more experience in the field. I'm now working a job for a mental health organization, which will give me like real professional experience in that field, which I'm super excited about. And I mean, obviously, as you know, like having a podcast, getting to talk to other people, it does just allow you to grow in so many different ways. And it's cool to hear other people's experiences. So I don't think I'm there yet and really ready to go back to school at this point in time. I'm enjoying working, very content with what I'm doing. So I guess we'll see what the future holds.
Well, that's a wise observation. I, as long as it's a wise observation and not imposter syndrome, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
just yesterday, I spoke with someone who she's a mental health counselor and addictions counselor, and she's been doing it for under a year. And she actually she had a mental health issue to the point she had to like leave for a few months and like work on herself. So, I mean, it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Two people I spoke to in the last 2 days have realized, before I can actually help people, I need to fix myself a little bit more. So, so that's very wise of you. That's
Yeah.
yeah.
It's very common in the mental health field as well, because obviously you're dealing with a lot of people's trauma, taking a lot in, and that's a lot to just hold emotionally. So it is important that you're psychologist, psychiatrist, whoever you're seeing is in the right headspace to really help you at that time. So
Hmm.
it's good.
Well, I don't know a single counselor that doesn't also have counseling,
Hmm.
but to start, yeah, I guess you need to have a pretty good base before you can
Hmm.
even get into the field. Um, I used to work in addictions, and every counselor I knew was in recovery as well. So, which is good, right? I mean, you
Hmm.
throw in life experience in there as well as education and stuff. So, um, so what made you want? So, what am I trying to say here? How did the podcast come about? How did you get into that?
I call it a COVID passion project. I
Me
just
too.
just, obviously had a lot more time on my hands. I had to take a fifth year at university because of my transfer. So I was only taking a few classes because I graduated in 2021. So that January to April. And I wasn't playing soccer at that time. So it was the first time in honestly my whole life that I really had downtime. And I just thought, you know what? It was so spontaneous. I just decided I'm going to order this mic off Amazon and just start. Like, I obviously have gone through a lot. I have a lot to share. And at that point, I had been sharing my story on social media for a few years. I was involved in mental health stuff at my school. So I knew this was what I was passionate about. And it just felt like the right next thing for me. Um, so yeah, I just started talking, sharing my story. I started with some of my close friends who I knew were also open about their mental health, coming on and sharing their stories. And I tried to follow a very chronological order at the beginning, starting with just like defining mental health and mental illness, defining what a crisis actually looks like, and then getting into supporting people. And then I just kind of let it flow into other stories and what people were passionate about sharing. So it's been a really cool experience.
Hmm. So how many episodes do you have now? Do you figure?
64 this week. Yeah, I do try to do weekly, but I also try to really prioritize my own well-being. Like if I know I'm getting overwhelmed, I'm very transparent about that. I'll just say like I'm not doing an episode this week and try to do that without guilt because the only person I'm reporting to is myself. So that's okay. Like everything's going to be okay if I take a week off. So really just I guess listening to myself and honoring when I do need a break.
Yeah, maybe I should try that. I For me right now, the podcast is like your soccer. It's like,
Everything.
yeah, I make no money on it. I like nothing. Like it brings no fulfillment to my family or anything, other than I just freaking love it and I love doing it and I'm just obsessed with it. And it almost becomes like a game. The cooler the story, the bigger the guest, the bigger the
Hmm.
name and all this stuff. So it's like I get amped up about it, and then I follow it on social media and like, oh, I got however many likes this week, and I got this many listens this week, and it's like level up, level up. So anyway.
Well, yeah, you have to approach it like a business too, right? Like you're trying to build your platform with the guests, with the episodes. There's so much planning and behind the scenes stuff that a lot of people don't even know about or pay attention to. And then the social media stuff as well. It's a absolute headache, but it's easy to get wrapped in everything that's going on.
Yeah, and then I found myself comparing to other podcasts. It's like, I I started 6 months before they did, and they're doing so much better. Or it seems they're doing so much better. I mean, I have
Yeah.
no actual idea because
Hmm.
social media, everybody just posts the neat stuff. But anyway,
Hmm.
yeah, it's I'm creating my own monster. I'm creating my own panic attacks by loving doing this, but whatever. Um, so now that we're up to present day, let's go all the way back to high school. Uh, you kind of touched on the suicidal ideation. Were you self-harming? Did you say?
Hmm.
And what did that look like? What kind of forms of in what form did that take, the self-harm?
I was cutting. Um, and just the suicidal thoughts, they were acted upon a few times or having very detailed plans for that. Um, and it was tough. Like, I think the ideation part is really what clouded everything in my life because they were constant. It was so overwhelming, and I could never see past that, I guess, cloud of doom. Um, and it was always just like the feeling of everything being so overwhelming, I just didn't want to do it anymore. It was never that, like, I didn't think people loved me. You hear that all the time, or that you didn't think you had purpose in life, just because, like I said, I was so driven. I had everything planned out. It was more just like, all these feelings are so overwhelming. I can't handle it anymore. And I can't put up that brave face anymore. Um, so yeah, a lot of it was scary. It was a very difficult time for sure.
And what did the self-harm, like what did you get from performing self-harm?
Um, so I describe it kind of as like an escape from those thoughts. It gave me something else to focus on. It was a distraction from the actual feelings that I could not handle. Like that was the biggest thing for me at that time, was just like the thoughts and feelings were so much. I needed something to get away from it, whether that was self-harm, drinking, playing soccer. Like I was always just trying to run away from it because I could not sit still and just like be still with myself, because it was terrifying.
Hmm. Is there maybe like a bit of control there too? It's like I can control some of this stuff. I can't control my feelings. I can control how badly I self-harm myself, or how much I drink, or not so much.
A little. I'd say it's more was just like my way of coping at that time. And that's why, like, I also hate when people, like, obviously those are negative, quote unquote, coping mechanisms, but it's what I knew at that time. It's what not saved me, but definitely got me through some of those tough moments. And I'm still here today. It's nothing that completely destroyed me. And I definitely did learn a lot from what would be quote unquote positive and negative. But I think calling those things negative does add a lot of shame and guilt to what you're doing, which can be very harmful when you're in the middle of it. Um, so yeah, I have really tried to reframe my thoughts on what that looked like for me and why I did it. It was an escape. It was a distraction. It was something that really gave me a break from those thoughts and feelings and something else to think about. So it's another complicated topic.
And I know the name of your podcast, but can you just say it again?
Yeah, it's called The Revolutionized Mind.
What made you decide that title?
It was a shower thought.
Oh,
I did a whole episode explaining it, actually, because a lot of times when I say that, people are like, what does that mean? Like, it's not a typical term thrown around, but I just really liked the idea of like a revolution. And I had a theme of like so my like slogan is reforming society, repairing your mentality, restoring your life. So the RE just kind of symbolized like change in a positive way, like kind of coming full circle, but in a whole new light, like in light of a revolution. So that was the brief synopsis of that.
thank you so much, Angelica, for that. I very much appreciate it. And I very much appreciate that you have your own podcast, and that's the Revolutionized Mind. Not that I have to tell you that, Angelica, but the audience, check out Angelica's podcast, The Revolutionized Mind. I will leave a link in the show notes so you can check that out there. Have a listen. Leave her some ratings and reviews. She would love that. And, even subscribe to her and download her podcast. And while you're at it, you can also leave this podcast ratings and reviews on Apple Podcast. I'm telling you, it's very, very, very important for podcasters to get reviews and ratings. So I very much appreciate it if you could do that. And if you would like to leave a comment or a question, you can follow me on Instagram at Bunny Hugs Podcast and on Facebook at Bunny Hugs and Mental Health. And you know what? Forget Twitter. I'm hardly ever on there. But on TikTok, you can follow me at Bunny Hugs and Mental Health. What am I forgetting? I'm forgetting something. But you know what you shouldn't forget? You shouldn't forget to make your beds and take your meds. Bye.